All right, well, it's 10 a.m., so I'll get this meeting rolling as we have a couple more people trickling in. You should have seen in your email that you signed up for this Zoom webinar, an email this morning that I sent out with a workbook from Angie. So if you didn't see that, maybe I'll just grab the link and drop it into the chat so that you can go ahead and get that workbook so you have everything that everyone else has. This webinar should run to about an hour today. So if you are in an area that accepts PDP points, I can submit that for you today as well. I will just need your name and your board ID in the chat. If it's not in the chat, I can't submit it. So I will remind you again at the end. And I guess we'll just get going here. So today we have Angie. I'm not sure if some of you know her. I know some of you do for sure. She is here to tell us about some mind shifts that you can do to help create a better life and a better real estate business for you. She learned about these tips a few years ago when she kind of came to a point where she was working so hard and she wasn't seeing the benefits come back for all the work she was putting in. So she went to seek out something, some kind of change, and she found a trainer that taught her all of this. And now here she is, loving all the results, and she wants to show you how you can make the same change in your life. Go ahead, Angie. I'll just make you um, the host here so you can share your screen if you need to as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, I'm really looking forward to talking with you today. And I really enjoyed working with Jake. And that's why we're all named Jake on here. But anyway, we just love working with Jake. And you know what I love about the real estate industry is that I wasn't very familiar with it. I wasn't very familiar with real estate at all because I'm just going to tell you something really quite honest right now. I have always went to a house that I wanted and knocked on the door and said, would you be open to selling your home? I've always done that. That's how I've gotten into every home that I have ever been in. So the idea of going through a realtor is not something that I've ever done before. But you know what? I did it through Jake. So Jake has been helping me to figure out some things in my own life because I have a belief that you can manifest whatever you want. How do you find people like me? People like me who want to go after exactly what they want. Well, I'm excited because we're going to get right into this. If you haven't already, get your workbook. There's just a little small workbook, and I think in the chat is the download for that. So you can go right there and get it. But I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen with you and we'll get started. So I love talking about this webinar because this webinar about being the one who decides to go for it is very important to me because there was a moment in my life where there was a crisis where I was not getting what I wanted, and I had to make a decision to go after what I want. And so I made this decision right in the middle of a crisis. So right now, I'm sure a lot of you are feeling a bit of a crisis because you're having to do business a different way and attract people a different way and show houses in a different way. And so sometimes when these obstacles come in our way, we tend to not know what to do because we're following a certain way that we've always done it. It won't work that way today. So I want to help you be the one who decides to go for it. So again, here's the workbook if you need it. So I want to make sure that you get that because there's some exercises in there that I want you to go through after we're done. That's going to make a really big difference for you. So what would it be like if you knew the hidden mechanism to achieve any goal every single time? I mean, that would be pretty exciting, wouldn't it? This is how I felt when I began to unlock the things for myself, when I began to unlock my own equipment. Now, I'm not a machine, neither are you. However, we have this equipment in us. We have a machinery in us, and no one taught me how to unlock that for myself, to be able to get whatever I want with absolute certainty. And so I want to help you begin to understand some of these principles. You know, it really is time to step into the new economy. It really is. We're doing things differently. You know, the Chinese have a symbol for crisis. They have two brush strokes. One is danger, and the other is opportunity. And it's really easy right now. You can see in the world where people are buying into the idea of danger and fear. You can really see it and really feel it. And if you're looking at the outside world of what's happening, it can definitely play a bit of a mind trick. So, what would happen if we saw opportunity instead? It really is time to step into the new economy, to a way to reshape the way that we've always done business and find new and exciting ways to do it. I think it's going to be those people that are going to make the difference. I think the ones that sit back and wait till everything goes back to normal, you're sadly mistaken. In fact, you're quite ignorant because that isn't what's going to happen. If you want to improve what's happening, you're going to have to embrace what's going on in the new economy. You're going to have to think outside of the box. One of the reasons I feel that most people start looking for ways to get out of the box is because they really have three lifestyle desires that they're looking for. And I'm not any different than you. I want to have these lifestyle desires, and I work to overcome and be a part of these lifestyle desires that I want. So the first one and you'll find it in your book as well, so I want you to write it out. The first lifestyle desire is I want to be free of any financial concerns. You know, the people that are coming to you to ask for help to be able to get to their home, they're having the same questions you're having. Isn't that interesting? You're providing a service to help them get where they want to go. And what you're doing is you're helping you get to where you want to go. And you know, I think what's so amazing is when you go after what you want, like being free of any financial concerns, what would it be like if you didn't wake up concerned and worried about money and you didn't go to bed? And every time you were in front of somebody, you were hoping and wishing that it will work out. What would happen if you could change that thought? Just that one thought alone. Another lifestyle desire that people are looking for is they want to wake up every morning enthused about how they're going to spend their day. When's the last time that you got up and your feet were going before, your head really woke up? That you were just excited about the day. The energy in your body and in your mindset was so exciting that it woke you up. You know, most people, we just live silently, in desperation to the end. What would happen if you could change that just by changing your thoughts? The third lifestyle desire is people want to enjoy daily relationships with other men and women who are upbeat, enthusiastic, and creatively productive. You know, many times when we're in situations that we don't particularly like, it really can bring us down. It really can begin to play on your mind. So imagine if you're having people constantly talking about the obvious of what's not going right. If you're not careful, you'll start absorbing that idea and you'll start believing it. Because the thoughts that you think get projected out into the world. In fact, reality is nothing but a historical document of what you were already thinking. So what would happen if you made a choice and a decision that you wanted to be around relationships that you really can enjoy, people who you find inspiring to be around? What kind of environment are you in? Now, I love these lifestyle desires. I think they help you go further in life, but you've got to make a decision about what it is that you want. And I think these are amazing lifestyles to go after. I love this saying by Alvin Toffler. He says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. It will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. You know, 25 years ago, the way that we did life, or 30 years ago, we did it at a much slower rate. But as technology has changed for us, we're doing things that used to take months and years in order to be able to do, and we can manifest it quite simply. Think about the idea of email. Think about just how simple it is for us to email people. And I can write a letter or I can do anything and put it on my phone, and within moments, it's anywhere in the world. Our technology has changed us so much that it's about learning to adapt. You know, the idea that we are here just to take care of food, water, food, clothing, and shelter, we're way past that right now. It is the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. That is what is going to make it in the difference, is those who can adapt. And right now, you've been charged with an idea of adapting. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Angie Tumlinson, and I'm a top consultant and member of the inner circle of the Proctor Gallagher Institute. I'm a licensed facilitator and coach for the Thinking into Results program. I help people use the power of their mind to get exactly what they want. You know, there's a science of our mind, and I did not learn that for myself. I had to wait until I was age 49 to figure that out. But once I learned it, I knew that was all I wanted to do, was to help people begin to understand their own power of manifesting. I help people turn their yearly income into a monthly income. I want you to think about that for a minute. That's how I first began to use this material, is I turned my annual income into a monthly income. Can you imagine that for yourself? Think about your annual income and then imagine earning it every single month. I don't know about you, but I can get pretty excited about that idea. And you know what? That happened to me in a very short period of time just because I changed my thoughts. I'm going to give you some tips today in order for you to be able to do that for yourself. I also teach people how to give themselves a command and follow it. You know, we're really good if somebody else tells us what to do. We're so good if someone else is telling us what to do. But when it comes to ourselves, we know better, we just don't do better. I mean, would you agree? We have a knowing and yet we have a doing problem. So we have a knowing and doing gap. So what we want to do is learn to close that gap for ourselves. And so you've got to become aware of what it is that's causing the gap and be able to put something else in its place. I want to tell you a little bit about my mentor and teacher. His name is Bob Proctor, and some of you may have heard of him. He's been around for a while. In fact, he's best known for the movie The Secret. And you know what? To hear him talk about that little movie, he's asked to do movies all the time. But in this moment in time when he was asked to do it, no one knew what The Secret was going to do. No one knew the impact that it would have, but it came at the right time for people to be able to understand some things about themselves. So Bob is known as the world's best teacher on human potential and personal growth. You know, he's been studying the mind for over 60 years. I was just with him in LA just before all this happened. He lives in Toronto. We were in LA at an event, and he is 86 years old and was up on stage speaking to us. You know, he's quite an extraordinary man. He is very young at heart, and he keeps moving and keeps creating. He doesn't even know what the idea of retirement means for him. I think it's a word we should get out of our language because we're always for expansion and fuller expression. He's helped hundreds and thousands of individuals and companies and organizations earn millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And he is my teacher and mentor. You know, I love this picture of him and I have it back here as well, because this is when I met him and had a big shift, a really simple shift that changed everything for me. And I'm so thankful for that moment. One of the first lessons I learned from Bob is that order is heaven's first law. That was written by Alexander Pope on an essay on man. So in order for us to be in a heavenly state, we've got to learn to be in an orderly state. And if we want to be in an orderly state, we get to live in that heavenly state. Really, success is about us finding that perfect order. In fact, Bob's mentor and teacher was Earl Nightingale, and he said, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And sometimes in that progression, going towards our worthy ideal, the idea that we want to achieve, we learn some lessons out of order. And sometimes those lessons parade around as failures. And we really don't do well with failures. In fact, if we go to failing quite a bit, we start thinking that we are a failure and we quit. And that's what most people do, especially when you're having resistance or things are changing. People may think, it's time for me to get out of this. It's not working for me. But actually, it's an opportunity. You see, there's a natural law of the universe called the law of polarity. And the law of polarity states it just is. There's no meaning behind it until I put meaning behind it. So if I see it over here, I could just as easily see it over here. You see, in order to have an outside, you must understand we have an inside. In order to have light, you must understand darkness. So in order to have a win, you must understand a failure. I know that may sound odd, but let me tell you, instead of learning things incrementally, if you learn to use the science of your mind, you can take something that's over here and just as easily see it over here. So if it's really bad over here, you can just as easily see it really good over here. It's the same energy. It's just a matter of how you're thinking about it. The second thing that I learned from Bob is that there's two secrets of success. And I remember getting very excited about the idea of two and how come I didn't know the two. And so here they are. The first one is you need to know where you are. That seems pretty simple, right? The second one is you need to know where you're going and head in that direction. If the two secrets of success are you need to know where you are and where you're going, then why are so many of us stuck? Well, I used to think it must have something to do with the goals that I was setting, because it seemed like every time I set a goal, I wasn't able to attain it. And month after month, it would just keep happening to me. And so I would shift the goal or change the goal, and nothing seemed to happen. Well, I can tell you, as I've worked with countless people and been a goal achiever myself, it has very little to do with the goal. Now, don't get me wrong, the goal is important, but really the problem doesn't lie in where you're going. The problem actually lies in understanding where you're at. You see, we have these hidden blocks that we are unaware of. They're called paradigms. You may have heard of a paradigm. I had heard of it, but I hadn't really studied it for myself. I didn't really know how it was influencing my own life. So I'm going to give you some definitions of paradigms, and let's just take a look at them. The first one is a paradigm is a multitude of habits and behaviors. It's a mental program that has almost exclusive control over our habitual behavior, and almost all of our behavior is habitual. You see, we're programmed two ways. One, genetically. That's why we look like our family members. The second is environmentally, the way that we were brought up to see the world. Now, the interesting thing about paradigms is, yes, paradigms are a multitude of habits, but guess what? They are other people's habits that have been passed down from one generation to the next. Now, why is this important to know? Well, we're moving from an industrial aged way of doing things to a technological way. And now we're actually moving into the age of service. So if you think about it, in the industrial age, all of our schooling and everything went to us working cooperatively together to help advance our society. That's what we did. That's why we all learned to use math the same way. We all learned to do different things all the same way. In fact, in the industrial age, we learned to put things on an assembly line so we could get it out to the masses. Everything from food, clothing, and shelter, all of that was meant for that time. And then the technology age came, where we started replacing those ideas of us manually doing it for ourselves. And now we're moving into the age of service. So if you grew up with an idea that I did, where I was taught you're going to go to school, do really well in school so that you can get good grades so you can get a good job. And then because of that good job, you'll be able to make money. And so really we use our job to get the things that we love, what money can buy for us. And I'm even going to shorten it even just a little bit. We use our job for the love of money. And so now if we're moving from the industrial aged way of doing things and the technological, and now we're in the age of service of people, we're going to use people for the love of money. For some people, that doesn't really feel right. Even though we're in sales, we don't realize that some of the thoughts that we have, some of these whirling bits of ideas, these paradigms are stopping us. Because I can tell you, anything that you're putting out there and you're resisting, it negates it. So if you're putting out, no, I want to have this sale and I'm going to help these people, but I don't want to use people for the love of money. Trust me, it may be a hidden one, but it's a whirling bit, and your results will always tell the truth of what you're thinking. In fact, how do you even know if you have a paradigm? How do you know if you do? Well, I can tell you this, you can always take a look at your results. I remember thinking, well, what do you mean? What do you mean my results? What do my results have to do with anything? I mean, don't results just happen? Well, there's a natural law of the universe that I was completely unaware of called the law of cause and effect. Now, this natural law of the universe works 100% of the time, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you're ignorant to it or not, doesn't matter. It works every time. Getting involved in understanding this little law makes a huge difference in your life. So the law of cause and effects means decisions that you made yesterday, a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 25 years ago, even 30. Yesterday was my anniversary. 30 years I've been married to Matt. That was a decision that I made, and I live in the effect of that decision today, a cause and an effect. Now, sometimes we may not like the results of the effect that we've done. And so we can look at the effect, and all of a sudden that effect becomes a circumstance. And pretty soon we start paying attention to the circumstance, and all of our thoughts are about the circumstance. And what we don't realize is we start creating causes to have that effect. And so sometimes when we're in a negative state, we're creating a cause and we're getting an effect. I'm sure you probably know people that it just seems like everything works out for them. They just seem so lucky. It seems like every time they go and do something, it always turns out for them. And so we call them lucky. What it is we don't understand the cause that they were creating. We see the effect and we don't understand what caused the cause. And so we say, that's lucky. There is no such thing as luck. Everything is done by law, a cause and an effect. When we're not aware of how to get the effect, we're not aware of how to create the cause. So let's say you didn't like your results and you wanted to change what you were doing. Well, how do you change to get better results, to get the results that you want? Well, most people, they take a look and they say, I'm going to change my behavior. So let's just take a look at an idea of changing your behavior. Let's use the idea of getting in shape for summer. I mean, you want to look good, right? And so sure enough, you buy a gym membership. So you buy a gym membership and you start packing your bag before or after work or sometime during the day, and you start going to the gym, and sure enough, you get the results. It's actually quite exciting. But if anything gets in the way of you going to the gym, what happens? You stop going to the gym, you put it off tomorrow, and the next day turns into something else. And then pretty soon you're just giving away money for a gym membership. That's because we have this thing called a psycho-cybernetic in us. We have a setting in us. And if we deviate from that setting, we'll go right back to the setting. You know, we have electronic cybernetics in our home. Think of a thermostat. A thermostat is set at a certain temperature. Somebody opens up the door and the temperature goes down. The cybernetic, the thermostat, tells the furnace to kick on, and it does, and it brings the temperature right back up there. It doesn't go above it, it goes right to it. We have the same thing in us. Our paradigms control our psycho-cybernetic. We're not even thinking. Can I just tell you, busyness of mind is not thinking? Busyness of mind is not thinking. We're going back to settings, to ideas, to paradigms that we've always used before. In fact, there's a book it's called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. There we go, by Maxwell Maltz. And in there, he was a plastic surgeon, and he was helping people with scars or things that would bother them. And even though he could fix the scars, people would still see the scar. They had a setting within them. That's how powerful paradigms are. So changing a behavior will not do it. I think that's the mistake most people do, is they want to try the newest thing, and they keep trying the new thing and the new thing, thinking that will work, and it never works. That's because we don't understand that psycho-cybernetic in us. So we can't change a behavior, we've got to change the paradigm. So remember, a paradigm is a multitude of habits and behaviors. It's our habitual thoughts that are controlling our behaviors, and all of our behaviors are habitual. So let's start with the paradigm. Let's take a look at when we start with the paradigm. The paradigm is a multitude of ideas. It's a picture that we're holding. You know what will happen? Our behaviors will begin to change effortlessly. You see, our will kick in, our effortless will. And when that happens, we get the results that we want. And these are permanent results. You see, if we don't start with our thoughts, no amount of skill or behavior modification will change the results. We must start with the paradigm. So here's the multi-million-dollar question. How do you change a paradigm? So I'm going to go over two ideas. The first one is an emotional impact. This is usually something that happens to us quite negative, and there's no going back. You know, my dad was killed by a train. He was 61 in 2007, and he was hit by a train. That impact had an emotional impact, and our family life changed forever. Things did not look the same. There was no going back. Sometimes an emotional impact can look like a loss of a job, or a loss of a relationship, or loss of health. Maybe even the death of a loved one, loss of a partner. And these emotional impacts on us, they're a forced change that's upon us. They're unpredictable, and they tend to not really feel that great when it's happening. But there's another way that you can change a paradigm that has more And this is what's called a constant spaced repetition. This is where we build an image in our mind, we get emotionally involved with that idea, and then we begin to take action in that direction, and we do it with repetition over and over again, evaluating what's happening. I don't think people really realize how insidious paradigms are. So we're just going to take a look at some areas in our life that our paradigms have enormous influence over. So we're going to take a look at our perception. You know, many times when people come to me and they'll say, Angie, I have a problem. Can you help me with it? And I'll say, you actually don't have a problem. You have a perception problem. It's the way that you're looking at it. If we took that problem and wrote it out on a piece of paper, and we get it totally out of you emotionally, put it on a piece of paper, and we put it in the middle of a table, and we sat around the table in the chairs as different people looking at it, we would change the way that we look at it. In fact, sometimes I put my dad in the seat, and I wonder, what would he think of that? And the way that he would view it sometimes will shift my idea of how to view it. Sometimes I put Bob in the chair, in my imaginary chair, and just thinking how Bob would look at that changes the way that I view it. Another area that paradigms have enormous influence over is our use of time. Man, this is a big one. How many of you have ever been guilty of saying, I just don't have enough time. There's not enough time. I can't get there. There's not enough time. I can't find the time. And over again, it seems like you never have time to do anything. Do you know what? We're all given the same amount of time. A high-end executive that's producing really well, and also a bum on the bench. They're all given the same amount of time. You cannot manage time. Time cannot be managed. We're all given the same amount. However, we can manage our activities. And some of our activities are based on paradigms that are not really giving us the things that we want. And yet we keep doing them over and over again, hoping to get a different result. To be able to understand changing your activities, promise, will give you back time. Time cannot be managed, but your activities surely can. Another area that our paradigm has enormous influence over is creativity. I hear people say this all the time. I don't know what to do. I'm not creative. I'm just not creative. Do you know what? We're all given the same amount of creativity. All of us. Nobody gets more than anyone else. Just some people have learned to express it, found a way to express it. Some of us haven't. Another area is our effectiveness and our productivity, and it all seems extremely logical to us. Our paradigms control our logic. And it's so logical to us that, you know, sometimes you can't get what you want. In fact, it'll control your relationships, it'll control your health, it'll even control your ability to earn money. It's like we have this invisible box around us, and anytime we try and make any kind of change or differentiation at all, we just bounce right off this invisible wall and we just go right back to the setting. What would happen if those walls came down? Well, I can tell you, just imagine how your entire life will change as you begin to improve in any or all these areas of your life. I can tell you this, the change will be huge. Not only will it be huge, it'll be permanent. I want to give you just a little idea of what happened to me really quickly, because we got a lot to cover. But in my life, I had 2 storefront businesses in Vernon. And we were working those 2 storefront businesses. My husband was working 10 to 12 hours in the one that he was running, and I was working 10 to 12 hours in the one that I was running. And we got all kinds of awards and accolades from our community here for doing such a good job. And yet, we were only bringing home together $5,000 a month, and we were raising 3 small kids. Now, that wasn't a life that I wanted. And in fact, my father passed away, and then my mother passed away, and I really realized the lack of money did not allow for me to take off time that I wanted to grieve. And you know, I was really struggling with this idea because I grew up in a very religious home, so we have a lot of beliefs about money. Like money is the root of all evil. All rich people are going straight to hell. You can't serve both God and money. Had a lot of big beliefs like that. In fact, another big belief that I had is that you had to work hard for your money. You see, my dad was a logger, so he worked really hard for his money. And so that's what I was doing. I was working really hard, and yet I wasn't making any money. So inevitably, Bob Proctor walks into my life. And he asked me, what do you want? I was so afraid to tell him because I thought I would show that I wasn't grateful. I wasn't being content with what I have. I needed to learn to be content. Well, there wasn't a lot to be content with. And so he said, what do you want? "What do you really want, Angie?" And I said, "I'd like to make a lot of money." He said, "What's a lot?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, why don't you turn your annual income into a monthly income?" I remember it just bubbling up inside of me. And I thought, did you not just hear what I said? How could I possibly take a whole month, a whole year and put it into a month? That's impossible. I'm already working more than I ever have been able to. He said, "Don't worry about the who or the how. Just go to what you want." So I thought, okay, I'll play your silly game. And he said, "I want you to write a story as if it has happened." And he said, "I want you to get emotionally involved in the idea." We wrote a story. We were out of the house by 5:30 every day. And so I wrote a story. My favorite thing was that we would sleep in on the weekends. We would sleep until about 7 o'clock. And we would get up, make a big pot of coffee, and we would read a book together. My favorite thing to do. And so I wrote a story instead of waking up and waiting till the weekends that I woke up on a Tuesday. That was impossible in my world. Because if I didn't go to work, we didn't make money. So I wrote the story as if it was a Tuesday and we slept in. Pretty soon I started changing the furniture in my bedroom so that I would have a French door to go out on a deck. And then all of a sudden I changed the landscaping and it started feeling really good. What would happen if I really could turn my annual income into a monthly income? My annual income was around 50 grand between Matt and myself. That was just in 2015 and 16. And so I made this decision that I was going to read this story every day and I was going to visualize it in my mind. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I can tell you this. 4 months later, I turned my annual income into a monthly income. Now you may ask, how did you do it? It doesn't matter how I did it. What I did doesn't matter. The thought that I could do it is what brought the idea to me. So what kind of thoughts are you carrying around with you? You know, that changed my ability to earn an income. I've also used it to release 80 pounds. I've used it in my relationships. Everything has changed because I've changed my paradigm and I'm never going back to that. There's no way I will go back and live that way. Knowing that I can turn my annual income into a monthly income and my monthly income into a weekly income, I'll never go back thinking the way that I did before. You see, I think it has a lot to do with understanding how you're setting goals and how you look at goals. So we're just going to talk about 3 types of people and 3, different ways that people look at goals. So the first is an A-type person. They already know how to do it. We tend to follow in the footsteps of our family because it's predictable and we know how to do it. So we tend to do what we already know. We don't like to risk anything. These are A-type goals. Do you know what goals are not meant for you to get? Goals are meant for you to grow. Nobody taught me that. So if you're not growing, then you're not getting. And so many people, they do what they know. And so guess what? They're moving sideways through life. And it doesn't really work. The next type is a B-type person. This is what they think they can do. Sort of an A plus B equals C. They work really hard at what they're doing and they keep working more and more hard towards what they already know. They don't ask for help. They just keep doing it the way they've always done it. And it becomes a grind. And they're working so hard and putting extra hours in that they're stretching themselves so far that they're missing out on all kinds of things because they're doing it the way they only know how to do it. And that's not very inspiring. It's just a grind and it doesn't feel good. And so people give up on it. Their resolution is it doesn't work. The next level is a C-type person with a C-type goal. This is people who go after what they really, really want. They may have tried and they may have failed. But here's the thing, it's for expansion and fuller expression. So they're willing to look at it and say, that's what I really want and I want to go after it. These are the people that I love to work with. The ones that are not getting the results and they know the results are absolutely there, but they know they've got to reevaluate how they think, how they do it. They actually ask for help. You see, the opposite of courage is not conformity. It's actually, or is not cowardice. It's actually conformity. The opposite of courage is not cowardice. It's conformity. It's going back to what you already know to do. And that already proves that it's not working. This is where we've really got to take a step in the right direction to say, what is it that I really want? I think a lot of it has to do with being aware as you're going through levels of awareness towards a goal. So let's just take a look at some levels of awareness that we have. The first level is animal. This is when we just react. I have a dog, Chester, and if I put a bowl of food in front of him, he's just going to go right there and eat it. He sees it and he goes right there and eats it. He doesn't think about doing anything different. For many of us, the way that we were brought up, we see something and we react the same way that we always have, and we're not aware. It doesn't get us where we want to go. The second level is masses. This is where we're concerned what everyone else thinks. Well, what do you think? And what do you think? And what do you think? And we're so concerned about what everyone else thinks that guess what? We're not thinking. We spend a big majority of our time right here. The next level of awareness is aspiration. This is when we have a desire to do something different. We've got to get out of the masses. So we're inspired to do something and we go start looking at what we could do. And all of a sudden there's so many answers out there. We get so overwhelmed with the idea that it's like, I just got to stick with what I know. And we go right back down to the masses, even though it doesn't give us what we want. But let's say we made it past aspiration and now we're at a place of individual expression. Bob had a mentor, Bill Gove, and he said, if I want to be free, I've got to be me. Not the me I think you think I should be. Not the me my kids or my spouse think I should be. If I want to be free, I've got to be me. So I got to know me. And sometimes as we start thinking about what it is that we want and we start looking at how everyone else is doing it, no one's doing it, even though we're inspired to do something different, just looking at what will other people say. This is so different, so dramatically different than what everyone else is doing. The majority of people aren't doing it, that we say, no, I can't do it. And we go right back down to the masses. But let's say we did make it past aspiration, individual expression, and now we're at a level of discipline where we give ourselves an idea or command, where we say, I'm going to try that new idea. That is what I want to do. I'm going to put the loan document in. I'm going to go and make a move. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to get a secretary. I'm going to do whatever. And so we start going towards that idea. And you know what shows up? Problems. And all of a sudden we look at the problem as, oh, I'm having problems. I shouldn't do it. And instead, we don't look at, maybe this is my opportunity to work this out. Instead, we go right back down to the masses. But let's say we made it past aspiration, individual expression, discipline, and now we're at a point of experience where we're ready to take action. We've gone through all of these levels and learned so much about ourselves, and we go and we execute the idea, and it's a pitiful return on all that work. It didn't work out. So we say, that was just too hard. It didn't work out for me. And we just go right back down to the masses, go back to what you know. Or maybe you've accomplished something just wonderful and it feels so great. And inevitably somebody comes around and says, well, who are you to do that? And you go, oh, you're right. Who am I to do it? And you go right back down to the masses. But I want to talk about this next level. This is mastery. This is where we learn to respond. I call it, it's in your bones. You're unshakable at this point. You know where you want to go, and you have a clear vision of that. I love working with these people at this level to get them to this level where they have absolute confidence of where they're going. There was a period of time, however, where I would get to a certain level and then I would loop right back down to the masses. And I did it often enough and frequent enough that it just became a part of my habitual behavior. It became part of my paradigm. Well, I love this saying from Eric Hoffer. He says, in times of rapid change, it's the learners that inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. Sometimes our paradigms will keep us going on the track because we feel like the track will work for us, and we don't realize the train left the station. We're not on the same track anymore. And this is a time to be able to reevaluate ourselves. And I think it's those that are the learners that are willing to see what crisis means, of either looking at the danger or looking at the opportunity. It's those that can adjust to it. I know that over this last little bit, you probably have had a lot of shifts in your thinking. And so I just want to stop and just evaluate. I want you to write down any questions that you might have. I mean, we've covered over what is a paradigm. We've covered what perception is. A lot of things we've covered. Maybe you could see where you've been looping. You get to a certain level and you go right back down. Right now, I just want you to just put a little couple of things down that you might be noticing about yourself. Because possibly this is a little thing that could be the shift that you need to get the keys to the kingdom of what it is that you want. we're going to go into a little bit more about how to get those desired results by really understanding your own mechanism within you. Okay. So, you know what? I have a cell phone and you have a cell phone. And if I want to get a hold of you, I can't, like Brooke, I can't just think lovely thoughts of Brooke and then just randomly dial some numbers in here and think I'm going to get her. That isn't how it works. But Brooke has a cell phone as well. And if she tells me her specific numbers, I can take those numbers and put them in the same order here. And then she and I are going to be on the same frequency. And you know what? What's interesting is that even though I don't see the frequency, it exists. In fact, you're swimming in a sea of frequencies that you can't see, but they are there. Because if we had a radio and we turned the radio on, guess what? You would be able to hear the music. So even though you can't see it, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. We have levels of frequencies all over around us. And actually, most people refer to them as vibration, how loud or how soft they are. But actually, they're often referred to as frequencies. We actually think on frequencies. Every great philosopher and leader has told us that we are the sum total of the thoughts that we think. There's that law, cause and effect. And let's say that this is where we're at. This is our thinking and these are the results that we're getting. But now we want something more. We want something bigger. And so we say, you know what? I'm going to go after that. And so we make a decision. I'm going after that. And so we start going after the idea, and pretty soon we start going after it. And now we have questions. Now we have things that we need. And so we come back down here to find the answers, because this is where we know, and this won't give us the answers. If the answers were here, it would already be here, and it's not. And so pretty soon our decision starts fading because we can't find the answers. And when our decision fades, the goal fades. You see, this is the frequency that has the thoughts to manifest our goal. However, our habit thought is clear down here on this frequency. This will not manifest what we want. What we need is what's called a paradigm shift. We need some of these high octane thoughts, these things of expansion beyond ourselves. Do you know, when you were born as a baby, nobody told you to roll over. It was within a desire to achieve more, to go further. Everything from you rolling over to sitting up, to be able to crawl, to walk, to run, to ride a bike, to drive a car. And for some reason, the shift slows down for us. And yet our world is evolving and getting bigger and bigger, and many of us are stopping. We need to change the way that we think. So how do you get there? Well, first, we've got to make a decision that we're not going to think down here anymore. We've got to let that go. It is what it is. Harvest the good, forgive the rest, and move on. What we want to do is start to think up here. And so we're going to come up here with the goal that we want, and we're only going to think thoughts up here. So this time we're going to make a committed decision that we'll only act and behave based on the end result of what we want. You see, we live on 3 planes. We live in the past, the present, and the future. Our mind can do all 3. If we're living in the past, we stay in the past. If we live in the present, it's very chaotic. Things are changing and moving all the time. We must go into the future. I'm going to teach you how to do that. And I'm going to tell you scientifically how you can do that. So what we want to do is make a committed decision that we're only going to see what our goal is, and we're only going to move towards the idea of our goal. When we do that, you'll begin to manifest everything. It'll start coming into view. Believe it or not, we actually think in pictures. You know what? I want you to take a look around your house right now. Everything that you have started out with an idea in someone's mind, and they held that picture in their mind. We actually are thinking in ideas of energy. In fact, I want you to imagine a feather. Do you know, when you went to school, you probably learned the periodic table of elements, because that's what scientists thought for a long time. Everything broke down to elements. And actually, those elements broke down to electrons and protons. That's what it is, energy. Everything is energy. And so if I were to ask you to picture what a feather looks like, you would know, because you've seen it and you've actually stored that frequency in your mind. So even if I pulled up a picture, you would say, oh, that's a feather, because we've all observed that. We actually think in pictures. So if we understand that order is heaven's first law, and we understand that our thinking starts in our mind, and we've got to get order in our mind, well, here's the question. Can you picture the mind? What does the mind look like? I want you to just write it down on a piece of paper what you think it is. And I'm going to tell you what I think most people say. 95% of people will say that this is what the mind looks like. Well, this is not the mind. This is the brain. This is no more the mind than your elbow or your toe. So there's a differentiating factor, because the mind will light up the brain, but the brain is not the mind. So what is the mind? Well, actually, there was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Thurman Fleet, who was involved in the healing arts. He was a chiropractor, and he understood that we lived on 3 planes simultaneously. We live on the spiritual plane, the intellect plane, and the physical. Look around you. Everything in your house started out in an idea in someone's mind. And then they used their intellect and brought it into a theory or an idea, and then they brought it into physical form. Even the paint color on the wall. Everything starts like that. And so think about this, even with Dr. Thurman Fleet, when he was a chiropractor, he could see that ideas were coming to people, and they would start intellectualizing them, and they would not express them. They would not move it into physical form, but that energy must move into form. It'll either move with or without you. And a lot of times, if we're not moving in the direction that we want to, we're suppressing the idea. And suppressing the idea does not leave us at ease. We're not at ease with energy flowing to and through us. We're at a dis-ease. And so we started seeing that the health that we were having was because of the way that we were thinking. We're at dis-ease with ourselves. So let's take a look at what he said. He stated the mind is an activity. It's not a thing. No one has ever seen the mind. In order to gain clarity and eliminate confusion, I'm going to create an image that we can work with. And so he created a very simple image called the stick figure. Don't let it fool you. It's actually an amazing tool. And this is what Bob Proctor said was the most valuable idea he had ever learned. You see, Bob Proctor, way back in the 60s, turned his income from 60,000 or from 4,000 a year to over 79,000. And then he moved it to over 1 million, way back in the 60s. He started reading a book called Think and Grow Rich. And he read that book every day, and he still reads that book every day because it helped him bring order to his mind. When he saw the stick figure, he knew exactly what happened to him and how he got order in his mind. So I'm going to teach you about the stick figure. So we're going to let the top half represent the mind, not the brain, but the mind, and the bottom half represent our body. Now, the top half we're going to call the conscious mind. You probably have heard that, the definition of a conscious mind, but do you really know how it works for you? This is a study of you and how to use your equipment. The conscious mind is actually your thinking mind. This is where your intellect is housed, your education. This is where you get to choose to accept or reject ideas, and this is where you originate thought. Now, the subconscious mind operates totally different. This is our emotional mind. This is where our memories are housed, our habits, our conditioned belief. This is where the self-image is. This is where we must accept. We cannot reject here. When a baby is born, remember I talked about there's 2 ways that we're programmed, one genetically and the other environmentally. When a baby is born, it doesn't have a conscious mind developed yet. It just has a subconscious mind. And so everything that comes into that baby's mind begins to write a program for them. And this program becomes the operating system of how they see the world. When we get to about, well, you start developing paradigms. So I'm just going to reiterate paradigms one more time. So paradigm is a part of our conditioned mind. It's our conditioned thought patterns. So what happens when we get to about age 5 or 7, this line gets drawn across. And now we start using our conscious mind. We start developing the ability to see pictures in our mind. Interesting, because this is when we started going to school. They got us right at the right time. And so when we go to school and we're getting aware of building pictures for ourselves, we start taking things in through our senses. This is now where we start taking it in to what we can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. So if you think about it, if we're living on three planes, the spiritual, the intellect, and the physical, if we can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch it, guess what? It's already in the physical world. So we just got reinvigorated with the idea that whatever we see must be real, must be the reality. And so what's happening for us is ideas come to our conscious mind based on what we can see. It comes into our subconscious mind and we get a feeling about that. And then it comes into our body and it sets up a vibration in us and we attract to it and we begin to take action towards that idea. And the universe responds and gives us a reaction, and that's what gets us our results. Now, if we don't like our results, we can reverse engineer it. This is what most people do. They take a look at the actions they were doing, they take a look at the feelings they were feeling, and they take a look at the picture that they were doing. You know, there's a better way to do this where we can override the programming and actually do it much differently. And nobody taught me how to do this. We have what's called these higher intellectual faculties. And these faculties are memory, reason, perception, imagination, will, and intuition. I never knew how to use these higher intellectual faculties, but these are huge. Where do you think these higher intellectual faculties are found? Do you think they're found in the conscious mind or the subconscious mind? I can tell you with absolute certainty of doing this a couple of times a day, 99% of people will say it's in the subconscious mind. However, the subconscious mind cannot reject. It can only accept. So let me just give you an idea about this. My dad was a logger. I was taught you have to work hard for your money. I can't override that programming. That's in me. However, up here, this is where I can choose to accept or reject the idea. And so when Bob told me that I could use my imagination and I could go to that place, I started building a story about it. And then he showed me how my perception was keeping me stuck right where I was, my logic. And so he changed my thoughts about it, and I started using good reasoning to be able to find it. And I wrote the story and I committed it to memory. And I did it with frequency of going to that place and living with the feeling of that idea in me. And I used my will to hold that idea on the screen of my mind, so that when other energies or other ideas came to me, my intuition would say, that doesn't look like your picture. Now, I want to show you how this is going to work. I'm going to give you a couple more ideas about the conscious mind. Now, the conscious mind, the top part, our intellect, do you realize that this can do about 2,000 bits of information per second? Your conscious mind can do about 2,000 bits of information per second. Imagine 60 seconds in a minute. That's 120 bits of information. Now imagine 60 minutes in an hour. You're at 7.2 million bits of information in an hour. And now think of an 8-hour day, 57.6 million bits of information. And then we go to bed at night and try and integrate this into our nervous system. No wonder we're struggling. And I can actually tell you this. Scientists tell us that we actually, even though we have the ability to do that many bits of information per day, we're actually only doing 40 to 60,000 bits each day. Now, the interesting thing about the conscious mind is it can only do one thing at a time. It cannot do a whole bunch, but it can flip really, really fast. That's why you can have conflicting ideas at this. It seems like at the same time. It isn't. You're entertaining this and then you're entertaining this, and you'll go back and forth and back and forth. Now, the subconscious mind, so you can only do one thing at a time. The subconscious mind operates very differently. It does over 400 million bits of information all simultaneously. Do you know when you were born, you did not have the habit of breathing? You had to form that habit. So when you came out, the doctor smacked you on the bottom, cleared out your throat, and you began to breathe, and they keep you in the hospital for a couple of days to make sure that you keep this habit of breathing. If a baby stops the habit of breathing, it's called sudden infant death. They don't know why it happens other than they just stop the habit. You have been forming habits your whole life since birth, everything from grabbing a rattle when you were little and all uncoordinated to where now you can grab things without even looking. We have this marvelous part of us that we have formulated all these ideas in our subconscious mind, but we don't know how to access it. And that's because the conscious mind controls what's going to get accessed. So really, if you think about this, the subconscious mind can actually tell the conscious mind what to think because of the habit that was formed when we were very, very young. And guess what? The subconscious mind also tells the body how to act and respond. And it's all lined up equally. And so we get exactly what we think about. This is the habit that's formed. Our thoughts, feelings, and actions are all in alignment. But we can override it with those higher mental faculties where we can take an idea, build an image of what we want. We can figure out the emotional feeling that we would like to have about that. And we can begin to logically see the action that we want to take. Now, people do this all the time. I am not telling you something new, but it keeps in the conscious mind. Many of you could probably tell me what you want, but you're not getting what you want. The reason is because you don't know how to get it past the psychic barrier to get what you want. This is when you've got to take feelings or you've got to take action, even when you're not sure how everything's going to turn out. And sometimes you've got to feel feelings, even when you're not certain that's the right feeling to have. And you've got to be able to hold one idea on the screen of your mind. Now, when we first start doing this, it looks like a giant mess. Everything that we know is lined up perfectly, and none of this is lined up. This is what's called a fail. And people will not work at trying to get this to all line up. You see, with constant spaced repetition, we have to be aware of the thoughts that we're thinking and hold one idea on the screen of our mind. We've got to have the feeling of exactly what it is that we wanted. And we've got to be able to start taking action towards what we want. It takes a while to do that. And when we do it, when it lines up, trust me, you usually achieve your goal before you ever really intellectually figure it out. There have been many times I've achieved my goal and someone else has said, hey, by the way, you hit your goal. And I'm like, what? Because really the pursuit of the goal is really what's exciting. You hit it. It's kind of non-exciting because you've been living there your whole time. But when it happens, let me tell you, your results change. Your conditions, circumstances, and environment will begin to change right before your eyes. Now, we've gone over a lot of stuff, and I really would like to invite you to work a little bit more with me. And I have an idea that I want to give to you as a special offer for letting me come to be here. I set up a private Facebook group, and I'm going to be doing a 3-part series on heart-to-heart selling. How can you take all that we just did and start using it for yourself with your clients? And how do you get them to be able to go into another way of selling? If you can begin to understand your mechanisms within yourself, you'll be able to understand someone else's. So I'm going to do a 3-day seminar in a Facebook group live, and I'm inviting you to do it. It's called Heart to Heart Selling. And so I've set up a free Facebook group for you to come and attend. So it's going to start September the 28th at September the 28th through the 30th at 11 o'clock. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 11 to 11:45. You just come on there free. You got to come into the group though in order to get there. So I think my associate, Jake Russell, although it's not Jake, but anyhow, has put in the link to go to my website, and I have a special page for you guys there. And on that website, it'll take you right to the Facebook group, or you can go onto Facebook and go, it's a private group. So you have to answer questions to get in, but it's only exclusive for Sutton. It's for nobody else. And it's called the Sutton Group with Angie Tumlinson. And there is the Facebook group right there. Now, once you get in there, I have another workbook in there that we're going to go over in the next 3 days about how to sell heart to heart, how to understand another person, and how to help them work through their paradigms. In this, I'm going to give you some really great, in this workbook, I'm going to give you some really great things. So I want you to be able to go and do that. So first thing you have to do is go to the Facebook, or go to my website, angietumlinson.com/Sutton, and they'll get you into the Facebook group, or you can go onto Facebook and go there yourself. So I'll just do this really quickly. I'll just go back here. So the Sutton Group with Angie Tumlinson. Okay. So I want to thank you so much for allowing me to come and talk with you. And I want to really help you be the one who decides to go for it. I think this is the best time for realtors.